Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Town Council to order. Would we all please rise for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 2, are there any visitors that would like to speak at this time? All right, number 3, the approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of December 21st, 2022?
So moved. Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Whatever you want. Okay. Item number 4 is appointments and reappointments, and this morning we do not have any to address, so we will move on to agenda item number 5, the presentation of the audit from PKF O'Connor Davies and acceptance of that audit. Do we have a representative to speak?
I'll start off.
Okay. How would you like to address this? I mean, the microphone is there. I'm asking the camera person, can they sit in their chairs or do they need to stand near the?
Oh, we can hear it this fine.
Okay, all right. However you're most comfortable.
All right, well, I can stand up, and we can stand right here if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
He said you can sit there if it's easier doing him on papers.
Oh, that's all right, I just have this one. So, all right, so we're going to talk about a couple of the reports that were issued. You have the annual comprehensive financial report, the bigger document, and then the federal and state single audit is the smaller document. So as far as the financial statements, there was an unmodified opinion, or they call it clean opinion. With respect to the audit, no scope limitations, no problems, no issues, so that's the type of opinion you're looking to get. The management discussion analysis, which starts on page 12, is a good executive summary of what happened during the year, some of the changes as compared to prior year. So I always recommend everyone read that to kind of get a very high level of what the rest of the document says. So some of the highlights talks about general fund balance. So you had an increase of 458,000, almost 459,000 as compared to prior year. Your unassigned fund balance, your percentage of 2022 expenditures and transfer out is 28.08%. The details of this can be found on Exhibits C and D. So Exhibit C will the actual number of your ending fund balance is the 16,731,036, and on Exhibit D it shows the 458,785 of your positive operations. So that's where you find it in the financials, discussing MD&A, and presented on that schedule. Footnotes, the only thing to highlight with the footnotes this year, there's a lot of footnotes in government reports, but a new standard was implemented this year for GASB 87, which is the lease standard. So now leases are recorded as a liability. Before it was only the capital lease, now there's only one kind of lease. So no matter what kind of lease it is, it's recorded as an asset, as a right to use, and a liability for the what it's going to cost to use that asset. So just looking at details of your budgetary statement, so that's on your RSI 1A and 1B. The revenues were under budget by a net of the 1.1 million. And although property taxes were above budget by 978,000, charges of services are above budget by the 516, which is about 1.5 million. You did appropriate fund balance, plan use of the 2,749,332 plus the 45,000 out of committed. So that's why revenues conceptually in total are under, but your actual operations were positive, taking out the planned use of fund balance. On the expenditure side, the general government function, well, the total were under budget by $1.6 million. The biggest pieces of that were general government function was 693,000 underspent. The majority of that, the biggest part of that was health insurance at $355,000 underspent. And then the education function was lower than budget by the $735,000. So that's the majority of the 1.6. All the details for that, again, are on RSI 1B. You can see all the other specific accounts. As far as pension, everyone's in the same boat with pension this year. Last year was a really good year with the market was way up. Unfortunately, it gave a lot of it back, at least as of June 30. So your percentage funded is 61, for the police plan is 61.23%. It's a decrease of 12.11% as compared to the prior year. And the driver of that was the decrease in fair value of the $2.1 million. For the education plan, the percentage funded is 81.38%. Again, that decreased by 7.53%. Again, same reason, decrease in fair value of almost 1.1. The volunteer fire newer plan funded at 16.75%, down only 1.14%. And again, decrease in fair value of the $20,000. So the impact of this is that basically the market decreased the value of the assets, which increased your liability. OPEB, a little bit different because you don't have a lot of assets in these, but the net liability at the end of the year for the town plan was $2,459,000. There's a decrease in the prior year of $425,000, almost $426,000, and that was due to change in assumptions, which specifically was the discount rate. So because interest rates have risen since last year, the discount rate was increased, which then lowered your liability. And the same for the education plan. Liability of $4.5 million, it decreased by $2.1 million, and that was due to 1.9 of change in assumptions. And again, that same reason is just the discount rate being raised, it reduced the liability. And both those plans are substantially pay-as-you-go, so there was some money that was put in there a few years ago, but it's not actively being funded currently. All right, I'm going to turn over to Catherine to talk about the rest of the reports.
On your federal single audit report, we had no findings or questioned costs. We tested the child nutrition, highway planning and construction, and education stabilization fund programs. On the state single audit, we also had no findings or questioned costs, and we tested the town aid road and local bridge program. You also received a letter, communication with those charged with governance, where we discuss some required communications, including our responsibilities as auditors, which is to form and express an opinion on whether the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. We also discussed that we are independent of the town and that there were no uncorrected misstatements and no material adjustments. There are some new applicable GASB standards that are coming out. GASB 96, subscription-based information technology arrangements, will be effective for fiscal year '23. This is essentially leases, but for IT. We don't expect there to be a significant effect on your financial statements. And then in 2025, GASB 101 on compensated absences will be effective. This just updates the recognition and measurement guidance of the liability. We haven't evaluated its effects on the town, but it will only affect the government-wide financial statements. And the last item that you received today was the recommendations to management, which include the student activity. The first item is on the general ledger that we recommend the district implement a student activity software program to increase internal controls and the efficiency of accounting for the student activity funds. And on segregation of duties relating to student activity, recommending they implement procedures to properly segregate the custody and record-keeping functions. And the second item is on education general ledger maintenance for the education grants fund and school cafeteria fund, recommending they properly record grant revenues, including the related grants receivable or unearned revenue as appropriate. And we also note that Prior year recommendations were followed up on, including the town payroll registers reviewed by the finance director, town accounts payable checks are reconciled prior to distribution, and tax revenues are recorded in the general ledger based on the tax system reports. Anyone have questions?
Does anyone have any questions for the auditors? I mean, I want to recognize that we just received this information this morning, and there will be, obviously, we haven't had an opportunity to look it over, but is there anything that anyone would like to discuss right now while we have these people present?
Just a clarification. What are the post-employment benefits? What's the biggest driving factor?
And the other post-employment benefits?
Yeah.
It's the health insurance.
Health insurance,
that-
okay.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's the health insurance
Oh.
on retirees.
Okay.
Do we have the copy of the, under representations requested from management, that's in a separate letter?
I don't believe we sent the management.
The actual rep letter, we send it to management to sign, so they would have a copy.
Okay, can we request that, please?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The separate letter that's gone to management.
And what was your, I didn't hear what you
Oh,
wanted.
a request of the letter.
Oh, okay. All right, well, Carl? Yeah. Duly noted. Correct.
Thank you.
Didn't we get it today? Didn't we get it today?
You received the management recommendation letter. The management recommendation letter.
It's different.
So the recommendation letter is not included with the literature you gave us today?
That was, the recommendation letter is, Sue handed that out.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to maybe is a letter to management that was required to bring, that was given as part of the package to be handed out. I think the three things,
I see.
federal
I
state,
got it.
the letter, and the audit.
Thank you. I had put it at the bottom of my agenda pile, sorry. Yes, I see it's here. Okay, anything else? All right,
I
well,
just
thank
want
you.
to compliment the completeness of these financials. It's very different than what we historically get, at least the ones that I've seen in the past. It's very thorough.
Great,
Congratulations.
very
And I guess
good.
other people recognize it as well, getting these awards. Good job all around.
Thank you very much, and thanks for those comments, Tom. Okay, so moving right along, agenda item number 6 is Chairman's Report. As the acting chairman, I'd just like to say Happy New Year, and thank you all for coming out at 8 o'clock on a very early day of the year, which for me is unusual. Thank you. Okay, so number 7, Town Manager's Report. Carl.
You have my written report, but to share with you an additional report that came in over the weekend. This is the quarterly report from the Poet Laureate. So this is just to make sure you're aware of her ongoing work. You can read it at your leisure for what she's done. She also wanted to provide for you copy of a poem which she will be submitting to the state. And so this is for your, again, your reference and edification. The poem does go on to the back page. And make sure you read it all. In the written report, we're obviously moving into budget preparation season, so that will be one of the dominating factors that will go into staff work for the rest of this month and beginning of February. The council will have to set a calendar for when you want to do your council workshops. So we can prepare a draft calendar for your next meeting for your consideration. We're probably going to there might be some value in rethinking how we've done it, because in the past, I've been presenting like the exact same day the governor's dropping his budget, which makes it a little difficult for us to put together our part. So it might be better to disconnect my presentation from the governor's presentation, to at least let his numbers drop, so we have those as good revenue assumptions going into what you get going forward. Stanton House playground has been removed. Public Works has stabilized and graded off the site. So it would seem to be we're reaching the end point on that one. That work was all done before the 31st of December. So the only question is replanting the seed. It's my understanding that the Stanton House folks want to fence off the property also, but it looks as if the majority of the work is done at this point. As a follow-up from your last meeting regarding the developer requesting a tax abatement, I did fire off a lengthy request of additional reports and documentation that would be helpful in understanding his request and financial impact. I have no response to any of that information requested thus far. I would assume it will be forthcoming. His consultant, who's preparing a financial impact statement on the project, I've already spoken to that individual prior, and I have an understanding of when that document will be made available, so it's not going to be made available till more the middle of the month. I would guess everything would flow after the middle of the month. However, until we get something in, it's going to be incredibly hard to have any kind of conversation with the developer whatsoever. And attached for your own reference, which is also on the town's website, is information that Eversource is putting out regarding their tree trimming in their right-of-way. This is more where their power pylons are. So you have in the packet a map which delineates the line that will be where they will be servicing, as well as a letter that will go to abutting property owners. This is part of a larger project that begins in Wallingford and travels through North Branford and North Haven, East Haven to the Branford substation, and then from the Branford substation is how it passes east towards us through Guilford and Madison as they continue to work their way across their service district. And beyond that, that's all I have.
Carl, so question, taking down the swing set at Pearson, what we were really hoping for was to not have to renew the lease, and so we got that off. Reading this, it sounds to me like the Stanton House might be saying you have to do the lease one more time in order to plant grass in the spring?
No, we haven't got to that point. So the original arrangement was that the town would have to plant grass. I obviously can't plant grass. It's not the right time of year. So I think it would have to be a conversation with the Stanton House folks as to whether or not we're going to have to sign a lease just to plant grass. But that's a conversation yet to be had.
Okay.
Any other questions for Carl?
When the developer presented his plans to us, it was disclosed that he owed $500,000 in taxes, and said he made claim that he paid $350,000. Did that happen?
We have not received those funds.
You have not received?
He made claim that he was moving it along to have a check released to our attorney who's responsible for the tax sale on the property. So that process has not reached its completion with a check being delivered to the hand of our attorney or delivered to the town. So that would be one of the important pieces of information.
Kind of, yeah, a little bit.
As we go into the budget process, we haven't done this in the past, but it might be a consideration moving forward that we actually have live files to use, as opposed to, I know Mary produces them as a PDF and then they get printed, but we're not actually able to interpret that information in Excel. A lot of other towns have an active file that they work from that's on screen, that's available on computers as well. Their computers, some have tablets. I'm not suggesting we have tablets, but that we work from actual documents that are active moving forward. And then we can do a comparison of the previous year as well. We have the ability to to use those files.
So you're asking to have an Excel file that you can manipulate on your own? That's
Correct.
not tied to the network or anything else?
Correct. Just the budget files that we use, which are not tied to the network necessarily.
On another subject.
Well, it lightens my workload, so I don't have to do any of the analysis, since you're all going to do it on your own, so that's fine.
It is within our, purview as the town council, and
Oh, yeah, no, hey, I do the work already for you, and nobody apparently consumes it, so if you want to do it on your own, I'd be happy to make it available.
As far as the Eversource clearing, I saw that they were going to be asking the people who own the property for permission. Is there any way that we can ask the Eversource, there's a person there who is a liaison to trails, if perhaps that could be used as trails in the future? Just a thought, if you're going to have a
You
conversation.
want their right-of-way to be used as trails?
Yes. That's a possibility.
The clearing that they're talking about doing now is the power lines
Yes.
up on Kelseytown Road, right?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, it seems at this point as if it's, I've walked those with my dog in various areas, and it seems like they're pretty clear. This won't be as impactful as what we had downtown. Speaking of which, Carl, do you know, my understanding was that they were going to replant specifically short growth trees where they had taken trees out. Do you know if that is moving forward? Have they addressed that at all? I know it's a seasonal thing.
It's a seasonal thing. They haven't communicated with us what that next step is. I know the tree warden was trying to get some response from the tree committee on that topic. It doesn't seem as if the tree committee was forthcoming with any information, so I don't know whether the tree warden just made a decision to close the loop with Eversource, or whether he's waiting for the tree committee to give him some feedback or not. I'd have to-
Because that's something we don't want to let slip away. There's,
The stump grinding was done,
Yeah.
and there was no advance notice to the town when they came in and did the stump grinding.
oh, okay, all right, so we're just kind of at their,
We are supposed to provide the plant replacements, and the intention was the tree committee would provide that information to the tree
wait, say
warden.
that again?
We were supposed to pick the replacement plant. The tree warden wanted that feedback from the tree committee. The tree committee seemed to be hesitant in giving him an answer. So that was my last understanding of where we stood
Okay,
with it.
well, I know the one time they took down trees in Post Office Square next to what is now Nada's, and they were supposed to replant or reimburse the town for that, and that just fell through the cracks. That never happened, so I really want to see something happen, at least on Liberty Green, where it's just, we're just looking at power lines.
Yep,
And it's-
I can close the loop with Gary, and if the tree committee hasn't given a response, then
Then just move on.
I guess we will move on and move on beyond the tree committee, even though that's their charge and why they were created, but that's fine.
All right, and I have another question about the financial statements that they brought forward. All these pensions that are underfunded, the police pension, 2 million, education, 1 million, fire department, 19,000. Well, how does that get addressed?
The actuary also receives this information and performs their calculation. They would give us a document saying this is the minimum you have to put into the budget. That is a discipline that the town has to keep putting in the budget. And that way you are slowly working towards addressing the shortfalls of the pension plan to get it to be fully funded. When you have shortfalls in investment proceeds, that will put more budget pressure on how much money from taxes will have to go in. So when you have poor response in the marketplace because of economic changes, it will put pressure on the town to put more money in than it would have normally had it been a bull market.
Okay.
The police pension, did they vote on the minimum for this past year?
What do you mean, did they vote on a minimum?
In the past, they voted what the minimum would be, the minimum balance would be, like 60%, 61%. That they would
No,
not
there is no vote to that, and I've never had a pension committee vote on what the minimum would be. So the actuary has performed their calculation and told us what we have to contribute. We have changed the investment structure of the program in order to reduce the admin expense that we were carrying with Wells Fargo, changed the structure to reduce what comes out of the pension fund that goes to paying the bank. So we've reduced our operating expense associated with it, but the committee itself voting to set a floor, I've never heard of that in any municipality, but if Clinton did that, I'll take your word for it. But they have not voted to set a floor.
And just for everybody's edification, the membership, just so everybody understands on the council, the membership of the board is?
Membership is Tom Hollinger, who this council already voted to put on. This sitting council, that's not a leftover. The chairman of the town council is also on it. There is a representative who is the chairman of the police commission, and the police chief is on it.
I just have a question on the audit as well, under Exhibit K. I don't have to go to the page, but it does outline all the lease agreements, and I know there was certain focus, and you don't have to answer this now, I'm just, for later. I know there are certain focuses within the audit, and I'm not sure whether the lease agreements are only focusing on the departments, that there was that commitment to focus in the audit, but it doesn't outline any of the vehicle leases unless I'm not looking in the right area. For later.
They're in there,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, they're just not under the same exhibit area.
I'll give the detail for it, but
Okay.
no, they've been included, they're part of it.
Okay, I'm just looking at one page, so that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Carl?
Again, on a completely different note, the fish ladder that you wrote about, and they want the dam removed, they prefer that. Down at the bottom of Fish Plain Road, they have both a dam and a fish ladder. I don't know if they're aware of that, or if they're the same people who did
The
it.
issue is the quality of the dam. You'd need to do dam improvements in order to be able to mount the fish ladder to it. So it becomes a much larger project at that point, and it begs the question of, do you even maintain the fish ladder, maintain the dam at all? Dam removal would be better for fish migration, to make sure that it can get through. So there's a fundamental question of, does it even make sense to do a ladder if the dam preferably should be removed? So
Okay.
we're dealing with an unknown where the water company says that somehow that dam is, they believe it's important to their water reserves for underground water. So we're not seeing the linkage, nor do they have any documentation to support that. They did ask the town if the town would do a study for them to determine that. They were told, no, the town does not have money to do a study for the water company. The water company might want to look for their own money to have their own study done.
And what is the relationship with NRCS? Because they were the ones who originally made the recommendation to remove the dam and create the fish ladder. Do they get?
NRCS is not involved in this project whatsoever. It is National Fish and Wildlife, and it's only a project for engineering and scoping. They don't have a problem if we change our scope from construction of a fish ladder to demolition of a dam. National Fish and Wildlife would rather see a dam removed rather than spending their money to fix a dam in order to then put on a fish ladder.
Okay, anything else? All right, moving on to agenda item number 8, council discussion. Does anyone have anything they would like to bring up this morning?
Do we need to set an ARPA workshop?
You agreed to do that before your next night meeting, which
Oh, night meeting, okay. I thought it was today, and I thought it was pushed off. Okay.
All right.
I wanted to
anything-
bring up something. I talked to Carl about this, and I wanted to get everyone's sort of opinion on this. And I don't think this is I'm right and Carl's wrong, Carl's right, I'm wrong. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. That's just my opinion. But Carl has mentioned a few times that we should never talk to department heads without first going through him. And I understand Carl's point in terms of, if we go directly to department heads and try to influence them or, politicize things, not include everybody, undermine Carl, that's bad. And I agree with all that. And I think, I don't think that is what anybody should do. And I think, what we're trying to prevent is what has happened at times where the out-of-control council member sort of goes around and tries to tell people what to do and tries to use their influence. On the other side of things, where I'm coming from, is I feel like the reason we are elected is that we're part of this town. We need to know firsthand sometimes what's going on, why the department heads are doing something or what their challenges are. And I think if there's big issues, we go through Carl. There's no problem. I don't have any problem going through Carl, but I'm just saying in the normal course of what we do, just being out there and part of the community, sometimes we talk to department heads. And I think that's an important part of how I form my opinions and and I think if we take the letter of the law of what Carl's saying too far, the other side happens where department head people are afraid to tell us what they're saying, and everything sort of has to go through, get the stamp of town hall on it before they filter it to get to us, and I don't want that to happen either. And I think there's language in the charter that supports both sides. I know what Carl, there's a spot that says, we shouldn't talk to his appointees without talking to him directly. It says it flat out, but there's also a line in here of town council duties and responsibilities. The council shall direct, supervise, and shall be responsible for coordinating the activities of officers, departments, boards, commissions, agents of the town, which the council has the power to appoint. So I think there's language both ways in there, and all I'm saying is that every time we talk or have a one-off conversation in the normal course of our existence, that it shouldn't be a point of contention and it shouldn't be a negative thing, and we shouldn't receive feedback and flack about that. So that's my opinion. I don't know what everyone else's opinion is on that, but I wanted to just bring it out to the council.
I think it would be nice to hear from some of these department heads to know what's going on and what the concerns are, and maybe that would happen at a council meeting regularly, since we're doing away with the annual meeting, or it would appear that we're doing away with the annual meeting. We'll never get to hear from these people. And I think that it wouldn't be a bad idea to have them at a meeting. Not all at once, obviously.
I have to agree, Carrie, because when we're in a situation like we are right now with Park and Rec, with so many different balls in the air, it would be very nice to have them be able to come to a meeting and we can discuss together what's going on and what we would like to see and anything moving forward. Yeah, I agree, Chris. It's a rock and a hard place being on the council, but having to filter what your interests are, what your concerns are, through another channel. It's been hard for me because being on the Board of Selectmen, we could just go and talk to whoever we wanted. But this is a different format and a different setup, and we have been instructed to do our discussions that way. I see you have the charter open. Do you have a specific reference to how it's, or did you have anything further than what Chris has already read?
Chris sent me an email suggesting that the charter did not put a limit on the council talking to department heads. He cited language that spoke only to giving them directions. I responded back to him that the charter is really quite clear on this matter. It's section 5.8 for your reference. The council and its members shall deal with the town manager's appointees and their subordinates solely through the town manager. That's pretty clear, and Chris has now pointed that out. The next sentence speaks to that the council does not give direction to any staff member. So the point of this form of government is that you're not politicizing the department heads. You're not creating an environment where some people have access to information that others do not. And I think that was the genesis of the comments that came out of the last council meeting, was that a meeting was held. Not all of the council had the benefit of that meeting. All of the council perhaps should have been at that meeting rather than just 3 individuals. Chris can speak for himself as to how he felt about it, but that would seem to be the crux of the issue to me, that some people had information, some people had the benefit of speaking to Bo, which others who were not involved and looped into the meeting did not have the benefit of. So you did not have a common set of information for the council as a body to make a decision. That's kind of the point of why you have a locus where you pull all the information together, so that all council members get the same information to support their decision-making, rather than one person going off, getting their one piece of information from a department head, bringing it up at a meeting that nobody else has the advantage of. Not only that, but also the town manager not knowing that, or a department head misspeaking and not having all of the information, or 100% recall of facts, which would again be giving the council good information so that it goes through the manager to make sure that everybody's getting it and everybody's getting the right answer, and the answer that is being given is not an on-the-fly, in-the-field statement, which may not be accurate, but something that's accurate and has good information. So there is a logic as to why the form of government does what it does. There is a logic as to why you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do.
As a, just historically, a genesis of this, while I was still first selectman, there was concern, we had Board of Finance and we had the Board of Selectmen, and we had the department heads. And we had quite a bit of, and I will use the word interference, within the relationship of the legislative body to the relationship of the supervisory staff within, universally across the town, going all the way from Board of Education to the town side. And when we went through charter reform, this was a significant conversation that took place, whether or not there should be a direct relationship from the legislative body to these department heads. And that was why, when we went to the town manager form of government, we looked at it from bifurcating those relationships. That doesn't necessarily preclude us as a legislative body from requesting, i.e., the department head, to come to a council meeting to have a direct conversation, and so that everybody is in the same room. There's also the opportunity that if you want to have a conversation with the department head, going through Carl and expressing your concerns about it, or reasons for the conversation, and us scheduling a meeting to do so, just so Carl's aware of those topics that are being covered. So again, us as a body have every opportunity to request department heads to come before us and have conversations on prescribed topics. I suppose there has to be a balance between our role and the information that we receive. So, perhaps we should set a time to discuss it further, and if we're going through charter reform, we're going to have the charter in front of us again, and perhaps we need to clarify that within the charter.
I think at a meeting is where everybody's getting the same information is not the problem. The problem is a one-off, having an independent conversation, which is then, that information is not known to the manager that that conversation took place, and that information is not then shared with 6 other members of the council. So at a meeting, it seems to make sense because everybody's getting it at the same time, everybody's getting the same information, as opposed to going off, having sidebar conversations, which is then not shared with everybody, and not everyone is in the loop on what information is being had until it then is presented at a public meeting that, oh, by the way, Department Head X told me this. That puts the department head in a difficult position. It puts council people not in the know in a difficult position. So there's a number of potential downsides to just going off and having your own independent conversations and not looping anybody into the fact that a conversation has been had.
And, you know, the way I started this is, I think I hear everything you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing with any of it. I think if possible, you include everybody, and going through you has a lot of benefits. And having people here at a town meeting is a great idea. I think we should do that. My point is only that, you know, I think you take away one of the things that we all got elected for is just being part of the community and knowing what's going on. And I think you also, for your point of, you know, you put people in an uncomfortable position by talking to them outside of this environment. I think you can flip that to say a department head is going to be guarded and worried about what they say in that environment. So you might not get their true opinion in a unguarded way of what's going on. So I'm not suggesting that we go around and try to foster up conversations. I'm just saying, if you're at a basketball game, you're talking to a department head. They're telling you what's going on in the community. You go to your kid's school and you're talking to a department head about your kids that are in the school. That's how you know what's going on and what's good and bad. So I'm just saying that we shouldn't go all the way to one side and eliminate the benefits that I'm talking about. I think we have a responsibility to be guarded in what we do there and not try to influence or try to get information that other people don't have. That's certainly not the intention. I know I personally value the collaboration that this council has, and I feel like we work together, and that's one of the best things that I've seen on this council. So I don't want to sabotage that by giving the impression that I'm trying to get information that other people don't have. That's not the intention. It's just to find out what's going on in my town. So that's all I'm saying. So every single time that happens, I don't want it to be a negative and to have flack come back and say, you did this, you tried to do that. It's certainly not the intention. Even the meeting that you're referencing, the intentions, and I understand what happened was that some people were excluded, and that is not what the intention was. I certainly don't ever want that. It was to get some information to a town council member who had questions. And instead of being the middleman, just connect it. And then it ended up a couple other people there, so it ended up being like some people knew the information. And it wasn't like any secret information. It was just like how the status of the playground and what the bleachers look like, which I know.
And it's in the interest of moving things forward without having, I understand, I totally understand where you're coming from. So in a situation like this where there is a project that we would like to clearly have input on, specifically regarding these ARPA funds coming up in this ARPA discussion, would we invite those department heads that we have specific questions for to come to that ARPA meeting in 2 weeks, or do we save that for a council meeting, or how would that best be addressed so that we can, garner opinions and move forward with input from the department heads themselves? Could we have, say, I would like to talk to Todd Hayek about the money that he has requested for the $300,000 he's requested. I'd like to talk to Bo about the general requests he has made. Can we invite them to come to an ARPA meeting, or would that be better?
That's within our purview as town council.
That would
absolutely.
be the process and the parameters that we to have them here, so that if they made comments, everyone would have it.
Right.
Not a meeting in the field,
Yep.
which has one department head and 3 members of the town council there. which does not include the other 4 members of the town council who are not hearing the same information, and then that information being used to move a decision going forward where 4 people don't know what the other 3 are talking about. So to have one person come in and speak to 7 at the same time is how you should be conducting
Yep.
business. You
So-
should not be doing separate sidebar meetings, regardless of the intent. You have to have parameters around this stuff. It's not a matter of protocol versus getting stuff done. It's how you're going to govern and whether you're going to govern properly or not. And that's making sure everybody has the same information.
So moving from this date forward, how would we get the, well, specifically Bo
If you
Potter
want
and-
Todd and Bo there, I will tell Todd and Bo that they need to
I
attend,
would
and they
like
need to be
have
prepared
Todd
to
and Bo
speak about
present
their
for the-
requests.
That would be for the ARPA discussion.
Correct.
Is there anything else in that, in the proposed ARPA funding that anybody would
Because
like?
for that specific meeting, you request anybody who is a
Right,
beneficiary of the ARPA funding.
Because we
to be
sit there
present.
with questions and we need input from these people. Is there anybody else? I mean, another significant request is the PD for their work moving forward. I don't know whether we're pretty much in agreement on that. Do we need the PD to come in? Or
Perhaps-
No, PD
perhaps-
doesn't have it. PD, what do they have?
It's a request in there for additional funding for the radio project, which
Yeah.
I've already articulated as.
That's a town-wide thing. I mean,
Well,
that
so-
represents DPW,
No,
fire,
well, I'm
and
just saying,
police.
is that anything that anybody would want input on? Would we
So
request any?
perhaps the best way of doing this is everybody, if anybody has any specific requests, then filter them to Mary, and Mary can communicate them so that.
That's where
and
I'm
Carl
going with this.
might
I'm
be able
just trying to
say-
find out if there's anything off the top of your heads that you can think of right now for people that you would like to have invited to that meeting.
I'm happy
No.
with Bo and
So-
Todd.
I
So
want
at
Park
this
Rec
point-
there, that's for
Okay.
sure.
Yep.
So
You're
if
gonna
you,
spend over $1 million on recreational in this town out of ARPA funds. I mean, that's over $1 million you put the pickleboard in.
no,
Well, I don't know,
It's-
900,000 and you had 250,000 for a pickleboard, that was over $1 million.
okay, so we are in agreement that we would like to have Park and Rec, and it would probably be Bo and maybe a member or 2 of the commission, and Public Works come and meet with us at the ARPA meeting. If anybody thinks of anything else, please contact Mary and Carl and let them know that we would like that as well. And my understanding is the next ARPA meeting would be the hour before our evening meeting in 2 weeks. Okay, very good.
Carol, I'd also like to add to that, that the numbers be specific numbers based on the price of bleachers
Right.
and the real price of
Right.
pickleball court.
To the
But
best of their abilities.
Do we have real prices on pickleball courts? Because I don't believe we have a study. You called Westbrook, and that's it. We don't have any site assessment of where you think pickleball should go. So we don't have real numbers on pickleball.
Well, as
Yeah, and I'm
importantly, has
asking for
Park
them.
and Rec?
I'm asking for
developed
them.
a-
Well, you need to spend money to get those
We need a study,
numbers.
and we'd have to.
Well, I mean, we can certainly call Hending Tennis in West Haven and find out what it costs to put one in.
That's not
Would
site-specific. You're talking about, you cited a property which is close to wetlands, and you don't just dump asphalt down on the ground in an area that's next to wetlands. So there should be some site work done, some basic engineering to look
Now,
at it to
Carl,
make sure it fits
would that be the
properly.
responsibility of the department head to do that work, to get that
It would be the
ball
responsibility
rolling?
of the council to make sure there's money for that to happen. There is no money for that to happen.
At this
So the
moment?
council's not done its job by giving Bo the money to make sure he can do the evaluation that you want, to have real numbers. So you want real numbers, you need to give Bo some money to make sure he can get real numbers.
Well, real numbers also involve bleachers, which are very easy to get because he purchased some not too long ago. And that would give us some idea what the bleachers cost as to how much we have to spend. on
And you've
them.
asked for that, and I am compiling that information from last week. And so,
Thank you.
again, Googling how much something costs does not reflect the cost of a project.
That's why I'm asking you.
So that number is being compiled. Bo did have money to have somebody scope out what that would cost, which is how they were able to discuss that they had a reduced price. So he has the means to get that done. He has no means to get anything done as it relates to pickleball to get real numbers.
It doesn't necessarily have to go there. We just want to know how much these things cost. And I recognize I cannot do that. I don't know the ramifications of these projects, but that is more your job or Bo's job.
It's your job to make sure we have the funding to hire an engineer to then do that field work, to say, yes, you can put this many pickleball courts in there, and the soils will allow you to do this, that, and the other thing. And this is what you have to put in as a sub-base before you put down the asphalt. That's what you need to have to understand the real numbers, not just the raw material of dumping asphalt down, but what you need to do to prep the site so that you have asphalt that stays and is there for a longer usable life than something that's going to just buckle and heave and crack because it's on the wrong property without the right base on it.
But of course, that's not my job. My job is to find out
Your
whether
job
we
is to
have enough
provide the
ARPA
funding.
money.
Your job is to provide the funding
Okay.
to make sure that the engineering work can be done.
So
Okay.
how much funding, how much does that cost? And can that be ARPA funds?
It can be ARPA funds, and it requires 4 people to vote for something to happen.
Okay.
Thus far, I do not have a single vote on anything to happen. I have 3 people that are very interested. I have others who are not on board with it to the same extent, and I have not had a single vote that has 4 people saying, yes, they want that. So until that happens, that puts me in the spot of not being able to deliver you real numbers. So stuff needs to happen, protocol needs to happen at the council level for something else to happen next. And until the council makes a decision, it becomes difficult to get you what you're asking for in real numbers.
Well, the problem is so we have to vote on ARPA funds on an estimate for Park and Rec, but we don't know what that number is. So I guess maybe we have to have a vote first on some smaller subset of ARPA funds to get better numbers. I mean,
To me, it comes
You're
back,
injecting a request in that Park and Rec Commission, as a commission, has not acted on, that Park and Rec does not have on their radar screen. So you want this to move forward. You haven't engaged the commission. Now, I know you're a member of the commission, so I don't know whether you've advocated for that, but the commission itself should have already weighed in on this. They gave their top 3 priorities. That's the original projects you have. You don't agree with that, and you want to do a different project. That's fine, but you have to now figure out how that other project is going to be put together and what the numbers are going to be, and give some direction. So 4 people at this table need to say, this is what we want as a project, and your commission needs to work on it. 4 people have not voted for this. 3 people are interested. We have not had a vote. You need to actually have a vote to take place. There needs to be consensus from this group.
right.
And there
Now,
isn't consensus on this topic.
Ordinarily, so if Park and Rec was on board with the project, wouldn't it be the department heads, in the department head's best interest to go and get estimates for what you're discussing, and then come and say, in order to move this project forward, we would need this amount of money? Because we're just.
And I think that's some of the frustration here.
That
And-
is the
and
frustration,
Bo-
that we
Bo has
can't call
said-
Bo and say, do
No,
this.
but Bo has pointed out, you're asking him to do a project where he has never, where there is no study been done on it, and all he has heard in his entire career here is, you have to do a study on it first. So there hasn't been any kind of study or any kind of legwork being done on this project, and it's just being pushed to say, we want this to happen. That's fine, but you're not getting this push for real numbers because you haven't engaged a design professional to go out there, look at the site, and say, this is how much it's going to cost for site-specific issues.
22 here, okay. Okay, all right, well, thank you for that. When we're going to move on to agenda item number 9, are there any town council committee liaison reports?
No.
Anything? Nope, okay, thank you. Then I would like to hear, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
Second.
All in favor? All right, thank you all for coming.